Shalom, Aleichem, peace be upon you, and welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Shawn. Today we are doing part 2 of Rosh HaShanah for 2024, and we're going to be following the Torah portion schedule that is provided for us at torahportions.org. I'll read the summary here in just a second, but first, just a quick announcement. Next week, I am taking a Sabbath from the podcast, a 7-day break, and in the 11 years or so that I've been doing this, there's never been a 7-day window where no podcast was uploaded. This will be the first time, and I just need a much-needed break, if you can imagine, trying to be consistent. Even weeks where I've had to be out of town or something, I've pre-recorded and pre-uploaded and scheduled them out in advance and still did the work. So it's, in 11 years, this has never happened. My ask from you all is that you would just pray for me, that during this Sabbath, during this break, during this rest, that I would just be refreshed. And because I'm definitely experiencing a lot of burnout and just fatigue. And we're going into, we're celebrating Rosh HaShanah, we're celebrating the Feast of Trumpets, the head of the new year on the Hebrew calendar. We're going into a new season. I just think and we're going into what I think is going to be a very challenging season. And we need to be mentally, spiritually ready for the battle, if you will, because there is spiritual warfare amongst us. And so I need to take a week to kind of focus on my own faith and my own relationship with God, and seek Him for wisdom, number one, about how to move forward with the podcast. Believe it or not, this, like I mentioned, been doing this for over a decade now. But the last couple of years, there's been a significant decline in listenership, significant decline in financial support, all of those things. And while those aren't the reasons that I do it, it still can be kind of discouraging. Part of it is, I do think that part of the reason for the drop is it appears that in some of the countries where this used to get listened to, it has been cut off. And so I think there's some of that going on too. The enemy's certainly attacking it. But mostly I need rest. We all need rest from time to time. And so, again, I'm just talking in circles here. If you would be willing, please consider praying that I would get a spiritual renewal, refreshing, and that I'd be able to return ready for what's to come this fall. And so I've got plans. Like I said, I'm planning on revisiting the Torah portion, which would start at the end of this month. But I'm still trying to figure out what to do with the rest of the podcast. And we may just keep the format exactly like it is. We'll just have to see. But I need to take some time. And so it's only a week. And, over these years, we've uploaded like 1,300 videos. There's a decade's worth of Bible studies up at the YouTube channel. I guarantee you can find something that you haven't listened to before, and I would encourage you to go and check out the playlist, or maybe revisit something that you haven't listened to in a long time. There's an Enoch playlist that I think you'd find very interesting if you haven't went through that. So there you have it. I will not be around next week, but Lord willing, the week after we will resume, and hopefully I will feel much rested and much renewed. So today, we're going to read from the Torah portion schedule, and then Lord willing, there should still be another podcast tomorrow where we read through the story in Exodus. Here's what it says for Rosh HaShanah 2, day 2, up at torportions.org. Here's the summary. It's Genesis chapter 22. The sacrifice of Isaac is what we're going to be covering today. Here's the summary. Judaism celebrates the Festival of Trumpets as a New Year's Day. Rosh Hashanah literally means the head of the year because it's the first day of the 7th month, and it's regarded as the biblical New Year. The festival's main feature is the blowing of the ram's horns, trumpets, shofars. The Torah portion for the second day of Rosh Hashanah tells the story of the binding of Isaac. The Haftorah, that is the prophet's portion, predicts the ingatherings of the lost tribes at the time of the final redemption. So that is what is on the schedule this morning. The sacrifice and binding of Isaac. Not a lot of commentary. I just want to read the portion as is tradition for all of you. And I pray that it will be a blessing to you. I am going to read from the Hallelujah Scriptures. So it's Yitzchak is Isaac's name in Hebrew. And I just pray that you would be blessed. All right. Open up your hearts. Genesis chapter 22. Let's begin. And it came to be, after these events, that Elohim tried Abraham, and said to Abraham, and he said, Here I am. And he said, Take your son now, your only son Yitzchak, who you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I command you. And Abraham rose early in the morning, and saddled his donkey, and he took 2 of his young men with him, and Yitzchak his son. And he split the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place which Elohim had commanded him. And on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and he saw the place from a distance. So Abraham said to the young men, Stay here with the donkey, while the boy and I go over there and worship and come back to you. Now please note, Abraham seems to believe that he's coming back with Isaac, right? He tells the young men, you wait here, the boy and I are going to go up and worship, and we will be back, and we will come back to you. So verse 6. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Yitzchak his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and the 2 of them went together. Please note, I'll make one more comment. In the historical book of Jasher, if I'm recalling it correctly, there's an indication, there's a tradition, there's a historical belief that Isaac wasn't like a little kid. Like, he was grown. I mean, he's carrying the wood up the mountain on his back for the burnt offering. And it's an interesting story. Hopefully we'll get to it. But not only does he seem to understand what's going on, but because he's so submitted, so committed to God and God's will that he's on board with what's going on. But we'll get to that at another time. Verse 7. And Yitzchak spoke to Abraham his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, See the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, Elohim provides for himself the lamb for the burnt offering. And the 2 of them went together. So please note, I said I wasn't going to do commentary, but that seems to be all I'm doing. Isaac's wondering, where's the offering? So at least at this point, he has no idea that he's going to be put up as the offering. And this, Abraham's speaking prophetically, because obviously this also is a foreshadow of Messiah, right? God providing himself a sacrifice. Not only providing the sacrifice, providing himself as the sacrifice, as the spotless lamb that would be sacrificed for our sins. And Abraham, the father of faith, the father of what it means to trust God, he believes it. My son and I will be back. Because Abraham hasn't forgot all the promises that God made to him about Isaac, his only son. Of course, he has Ishmael, but that's a whole other thing. And Abraham is certain that God will provide for whatever's needed for this. Verse 8, Then Abraham said, My son, Elohim provides for himself the lamb for the burnt offering. And the two of them went together, and they came to a place which Elohim had commanded him. But Abraham built an altar there, and placed the wood in order, and he bound Yitzchak, his son, and he laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hands, and he took the knife to slay his son. But the messenger of Jehovah called to him from the Shemayim, that is to say heavens, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not lay your hand on the boy, nor touch him. For now I know that you revere Elohim, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted his eyes, and he looked, and he saw behind him a ram caught in a bush by its horns. And Abraham went, and he took the ram, and he offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place Jehovah-Yireh, as he said, To this day, on the mountain Jehovah provides. And the messenger of Jehovah called to Abraham a second time from the Shemayim, and said, By myself I have sworn, declares Jehovah, because you have done this, and have not withheld your son, your only son, that I shall certainly barak you, that is to say bless, and I shall certainly increase your seed as the stars of the Shemayim, and as the sand which is on the seashore, and let your seed possess the gate of their enemies. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be Baruch, blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. Then Abraham returned to the young men, and they rose up, and they went together to Beersheba. And Abraham dwelt in Beersheba, and it came to be, after these events, that it was reported to Abraham, saying, See, Milcah too has borne children to your brother Nahor. Utz the firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram, and Kasad, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Yaldaph, and Bethiel. And Bethiel brought forth Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. And his concubine, whose name was Ruumah, also bore Tabach, and Gaham, and Tahash, and Ma'akah. And that is chapter 22, our reading for Rosh HaShanah Day 2. These last 2 podcasts, I realize, haven't been very long, but we're just following the schedule. And unfortunately, I don't have time to dig into both this and the prophets portion. But I hope that you found this, because we haven't done this before, where we're reading the story of Abraham and Isaac as part of the Feast of Trumpets celebration. But I hope that you have enjoyed it nonetheless. Thank you to those of you who listen, those of you who pray, those of you who are being blessed by the podcast, but also faithful to listen and to pray for the podcast. Thank you so much. Please remember to pray for me next week for wisdom, guidance, and a renewal of strength. Peace, grace be with all of you. Until next time, God bless.